What is multimodality? Multimodality is simply the incorporation of multiple modes of communication. It's the recognition that we communicate in more than one way. We communicate beyond just language, which is typically privileged in schools. Hi, I'm Erin Silcox with TraumaInformedTeachers.com with practical tools for conscientious educators just like you. Multimodality can change your teaching. It can help you embrace more than one way of communicating. It can include more students and increase creativity. Not sure what multimodality is? Keep watching to find out. Again, simply put, multimodality includes more than one mode to communicate. I'm going to define each of the modes. They include linguistic, visual, spatial, digital, and oral, A-U-R-A-L. And let's be clear, I'm not talking about every single possible way to communicate. I'm just saying these are categories that have been defined, particularly in an article by Albers and Harste in 2007. So some folks might argue that there are more modes, some might argue that there are fewer modes. So these are the ones I'll just be talking about today, and the ones that I've found the most salient in my classroom. So the linguistic mode is the one you're probably most familiar with. It includes elements of the spoken or written word, and it's any language that we say or hear, and any words that we write or read in print-based form. The linguistic mode uses words to convey meaning. Classroom examples of the linguistic mode include our typical 5-paragraph essay, a class discussion, a reading comprehension quiz, an oral presentation, anything that involves words. The next mode I'll talk about is visual. The visual mode is not to be confused with the spatial mode, which I'll talk about in a second. It includes elements of design. So it's the use of physical material or digital media to convey a message with visual means. I think of this mostly as sort of artistic elements. Ways that visual elements communicate meaning include color, contrast, shape, tone, texture, and balance. And classroom examples include painting, collage, mural, and anything else that you sort of can be artistic with. You know, just coloring is a visual mode, maybe drawing pictures, comic strips, that kind of thing. Then spatial, again, it's not to be confused with visual, but they often work in tandem. The spatial mode includes messages conveyed by how objects are positioned in relation to one another. For instance, it uses size, shape, and position to communicate meaning. Classroom examples might include an infographic where one shape is bigger than another to connotate importance. Another example is a diorama. A map would be a spatial project or example in the classroom. Then digital is, as you can see, a lot of these overlap. I mean, they all overlap in a way, depending on how they're used. Although other modes can be consumed and composed digitally, the digital mode specifically refers to communication that takes advantage of digital technologies. So it's all about using the affordances of digital technology to convey meaning. Classroom examples include video editing and creation. So think of things that you can't do without technology. Visual and augmented reality simulations, modeling, and coding, all things that are really specific to digital media. But again, for instance, you can compose using spatial and visual elements digitally. So they all overlap. Gestural might also overlap too if we're talking about video editing. So this mode includes ways that we use our body in movement to create meaning. It employs facial expressions, body language, gestures, and even physical human interaction. So if we're, giving a high five to communicate meaning. Classroom examples include skits, charades, YouTube videos, TikToks, if you're watching this video in 2030, that might not be a social media outlet anymore, but any social media outlet that allows us to use video and dance, so ways that we communicate using our body. And I'll talk a little bit more in another video about how this particular mode could be specifically beneficial to trauma-affected youth. For now, I'll move on to aural, A-U-R-A-L. It's another word for sound. The aural mode uses sound, music, tone of voice, language type, volume, and more to communicate meaning. Classroom examples, again, meshing modes. One would be a poetry slam, in which you're using language, but with the elements of the aural mode to communicate more meaning. Musical interpretations, creating soundtracks, so having students maybe read a novel and then create a soundtrack for one of the characters, what they might have on a playlist that they listen to in their headphones. So the point of multimodality, really, it's kind of a social justice issue in a way, and a contemporary issue. It recognizes that language has been centered to serve the dominant culture at the expense of rich classroom experiences for all students. And a lot of this has to do with standardization as well. Language is not always and may rarely be the best way to communicate meaning. Yet its power of gatekeeping in education make it a strong focus in schools. What's more, many students who may already be marginalized and or affected by trauma are often talented users of other modes of communication. They might even consider themselves, and others might consider themselves, experts. So centering print ignores many students' expertise in out-of-school literacies. Recognize the power of multiple modes to communicate and the hegemonic nature of print-centrism, and that can open your classroom to allow the achievement of more students. So stay tuned, click on the next video, and also hit subscribe below to get alerts so that you can see my next videos coming out.